Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, we are doing another book review. No, not yet. I know I still have to finish the third book in the Crown of Feathers trilogy. Don't worry, I'll get to Wings of Shadow. Eventually. But today, we are looking at something else. We are looking at a Star Wars book. Today, I will be reviewing Star Wars Shadow of the Sith, published in June 28th, 2022, written by Adam Christopher, with an audiobook narrated by William Demerit. As always, there is a blanket spoiler warning in place. I know I say because I do these unscripted, I'm just putting it in place in case I decide to talk about spoilers. I feel like there are aspects of this book I cannot talk about without going into spoilers, so this is your only warning. But before we get into the spoilers, overall thoughts. This book is okay. It's good. I wouldn't call it anything better than good. I had a lot of issues with it. In particular, the pacing. This book, narratively, is kind of sloppy. I have no other way to describe it, and I feel like even sloppy, is too harsh, but it feels very bloated, very padded. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it feels like this was originally supposed to be two separate books that were then mashed together to create one book because the two books couldn't sustain themselves. Again, that's just my theory. That's what this book feels like. I don't know what actually happened. But it leads the book to feeling very bloated, very padded in places, and especially places where the pacing just really takes a hit and things really slow down to a grinding halt. That being said, the prose is really well handled, and the characters, especially the major returning characters, are very well realized. Luke and Lando are very in character for the plot of this book, and there was something. I feel like I had a better conclusion planned in my thoughts, but I don't remember what it was, so I'll just end there. Luke and Lando in particular are very well realized. All of the returning characters are very well done. The prose is really easy. I would say, if you can, get the audiobook. The audiobook is really the best thing, is really amazing. Sorry, I had two separate thoughts that were trying to escape at once. William Demerit's narration, for me personally, is the best thing about this book. He gives a great voice to each character. They're so distinct, and I love the emotion he even puts into reading the prose. That's a flaw I feel like some audiobook narrators have. They'll give all the emotion and performance into the characters, but when they narrate the prose, it's very flat. That's not the case here. William Demerit is spectacular. His voice for all the characters is really good, and just the prose is great. So, what is the plot of Shadow of the Sith? Well, this is just backstory to a plot point that's mentioned in The Rise of Skywalker. Before I get into that, I just want to clarify, this is not a retcon, this is not a fix, this is just, oh hey, this thing was mentioned in one of the movies. This is the backstory of that mention. So, Luke and Lando Calrissian, several years before the events of The Force Awakens, are hunting down the mercenary bounty hunter and Jedi killer Ochi of Bestoon. Remember? This guy? Meanwhile, Ochi is hunting down Rey and her parents at the behest of Emperor Palpatine. That is the A-plot. And the thing is, when I do finally get to the spoilers, that is where I'm going to majorly talk about the B-plot. So we'll get there, don't worry. Where was I going with that? Shoot. Luke and Lando are hunting down Ochi. Ochi is hunting down Rey's parents. And this book also explains why, in The Rise of Skywalker, Lando was on the Pisana and didn't help the Resistance for 2 movies. And no, I'll stop there. It's interesting to note that in the 2 POVs here, in our 2 major POVs with Luke and Lando, with Luke, the plot stuff is more interesting. I like the plot stuff better, but the character beats are kind of flat, kind of dull, because there's no arc Luke goes on. But with Lando, the plot stuff is kind of dull, but the character beats are really good. I love the way Lando is characterized in this novel. Also, this kind of brings back something from Heir to the Empire. I kind of like that either in between movies or after movies, there's this whole thing that Luke and Lando became bros. They're like the best of friends. It's a dynamic I really love, and there's a bit of that in here. I love their chemistry together, and it's just the strength of Christopher's writing that the characters are so fully well realized and their dynamic is so good. That does lead me into something else, and kind of the bloating here. So as I mentioned, the A plot is Luke and Lando going to hunt down Ochi of Bestoon while Ochi hunts down Rey's parents. The plot of this novel does not begin until chapter 17. It is a 67 chapter novel, I should also mention, and the audiobook is about 17 hours long. So I can't give you a page count or anything. So that's my frame of reference. I have so many thoughts I'm trying to make coherent and streamline here. So, yeah, and that's where some of the bloating comes in, I feel like. Because the first 16 chapters are all introduction. And then finally the novel picks up in chapter 17. Another point where I think this novel is really padded is that there are too many POV characters. It's a cinematic technique where, every so often you want to shake things up. You want to switch scenes, show new characters. You want to break away every so often. It's not something I like when books do it. It feels like books are trying to be cinematic. There's no better way to describe it. And because of that, there are some books that makes it work, especially when books have multiple protagonists, but the way this book does it, it feels like the book is trying to be a movie. It doesn't realize its limitations, it doesn't realize its strengths. And, just a point of reference is that this book has 9 or 10 POV characters. I'll explain that in a second. So, we have Luke Skywalker, Lando Calrissian, Ochi of Bestoon. We have Rey's parents, Dathan and Miramir, and they're the point of contention because, because they're always together. So even when a chapter is from Miramir's point of view or from Dathan's point of view, it feels like the same point of view. And then we have Komat, a major supporting character in the novel who becomes important later on. We have Kaiza, who I'll talk more about in the B plot because she is the main antagonist of the B plot. We have General Pride for 2 chapters. Remember him? Richard E. Grant's character in The Rise of Skywalker. And then we have 3 one-off characters who are sort of catalysts for major plot beats, but are only present for 1 chapter and then never seen again. Or at least we only get their POVs for 1 chapter. And again, that is where part of the bloating comes from, I feel. So, and I think part of the other issue is with how padded this book feels, is that, except for very few moments, which feel very surface level too, I should say, the A plot and the B plot don't interact at all. So before I get into spoilers too, there is just one more thing I want to say. There are, of course, because this is a Star Wars novel, a lot of fun nods and references. They don't feel forced, they don't feel out of place, but again, they are just very fun little nods. Like we get more on the relationship between Luke and Lor San Tekka, Max von Sydow's character from the opening of The Force Awakens. Dio makes an appearance, because remember, he was Ochi's droid before our heroes found him in The Rise of Skywalker. And he is just as useless here as he is in The Rise of Skywalker. As I mentioned, General Pride makes an appearance. If you've played Battlefront 2, the DICE game, not the original game by Pandemic Studios, Shriv makes an appearance to call in a favor from Lando and help them get information. So there are a little fun. Oh, but my favorite, before I end on this, my favorite is that, when George Lucas first released the original trilogy on DVD, one of the most controversial changes he made in the DVD release gets referenced. So at the end of it's the end of Return of the Jedi. This book says that both Luke Skywalker's Force Ghost and Sebastian Shaw's Force Ghost are both canon. And this is kind of the madcap, insane things the Star Wars Expanded Universe does that I love. I'm not going to explain how they're both canon, so if you want, you just kind of need to read the book. Like I said, it's not a bad book. I actually thoroughly enjoy it. There are some great moments, it's just, and it's very well written, it's just, it is very padded, and you can tell where the padding is. It felt like, someone kept saying, make it longer, or my original theory, this was two separate books that were then mashed together. But yeah, that is the big problem, the padding and the pacing. So let's talk about the B plot, because I have some more thoughts on the B plot, and, this is where we'll get into spoilers. So the B plot of this novel, Luke has found shards of a kyber crystal. I'm not going to get into this because this is one of those legends to canon changes that people really like to go off on. I'm not going to go into. And a Sith cultist is seeking those shards for their own purposes. Now I'm trying to figure out how to say this because it gets really complicated. Before the novel began, Luke kind of stopped a dark side cult, and the person trying to get the shards of this kyber crystal are one of the last vestiges of this cult Luke stopped. So this is where it gets really weird. The main antagonist of this novel and the antagonist of the B plot is a woman named Kaisa. But not really. You see, Kaisa has, because the true main plot of this novel is the ghost of a Sith Lord. No, not that one. Anyway, sorry, that joke was funnier in my head. Kaisa has this mask that belonged to a Sith Lord named Viceroy Exim Panchard. And Panchard found a way to make himself immortal by infusing his spirit into this mask, by basically committing atrocious acts of bloodshed. So, and it's one of the horrifying parts of this novel. There are some really horrific parts of this novel that basically, as Kaisa wears the masks and Panchard's spirit sort of takes her over, she hears the screams of Panchard's victims. And when Luke finds her and kills her in a duel, we're in the spoiler section, by the way, Panchard's spirit takes over her lifeless body, and her screams join the screams of all of Panchard's other victims, which kind of allows him to live on. And, okay, that is one thing I want to comment on. This novel makes the Sith the most horrifying they've ever been, for me, at least since Darth Plagueis. The Sith Lords have always been very cool villains to me, but this novel really goes in depth on just the horrific acts they commit, and my god, this is the most terrifying the Sith have ever been. Panchard is a very generic villain. He doesn't have anything interesting. He's just, bloodthirsty. But the way he's written, it's spine-chilling. And that is also something I am going to bring back to the A-plot. Despite his interesting appearance and, that he was ultimately responsible for killing Rey's parents, Ochi of Bestoon, comparatively, is a very lame villain. Emperor Palpatine himself personally seeks out Ochi and tells him to hunt down Rey's parents. And Ochi has this reputation as having been a Jedi killer during the Clone Wars. What we see does not live up to that reputation. And because Ochi is basically an alcoholic idiot. He lashes out at his, oh shoot, I just forgot the word. His subordinates, there we go. And he even just, in a tantrum, kills a few of them. Or, when he's not doing that, he's drunk off his ass. towards the third act, in the I guess the resolution of the novel, when Ochi goes to Pisana looking for Rey's parents, he's basically ran out of booze, so his solution is to drink starship coolant. And basically, in a drunken haze, he goes out into Pisana and sinks in quicksand. Like, Ochi is such a lame villain, it's kind of laughable. But Exim Panchar, that's the point that was a bit of a tangent, is absolutely terrifying. But that is kind of my problem. Also kind of one of my problems with this book, one of my other problems with this book. So like I said, we have our A plot and our B plot. As we get into the third act, the A plot slowly gets forgotten as the B plot kind of takes over. And then at the end, after the B plot gets resolved, the final chapters dedicated to the A plot and sort of setting the stage for the Rise of Skywalker feel very tacked on. It feels more like a footnote than a meaningful part of the novel. So, yeah, and basically, one of the things I was getting through, Lando decides to stay on Pisana because they found Ochi's ship. Not really realizing that Ochi is dead, Lando decides, oh, he'll stay behind because he knows if Ochi is alive, he'll come looking for his ship. Also, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about Lando. So, one of the plot points Rise of Skywalker kind of teases is that Lando had a daughter who was kidnapped by the First Order. And one of the major driving forces of wanting to stop Ochi and find this family that he only knows as the family he doesn't know anything about, is that he doesn't want a repeat of what happened to him. The stuff with his daughter is very surface level, I have to admit. Anyway, that's kind of everything I have to say. Shadow of the Sith has some good moments. It's kind of a mid-novel, though. There's some great stuff, don't get me wrong. Like I said, the B plot is really good. It doesn't gel with the A plot. It's the most horrifying the Sith have ever been. But yeah, it's just the padding and the pacing really drag this novel down. So I can't say anything more than mid. Like, if you're a Star Wars fan, seek it out. It's enjoyable enough. It's fun. It's not dull. But those are just my thoughts. Shadow of the Sith. Have you read it? What are yours? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, share the video around. All of it helps my channel grow. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter, where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.